Good to go? All right, we're good? All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started today. Thank you for our friends of Smith who are joining us. Hopefully you guys can hear us. We're going to talk about a couple things today in regards to science, because we have new science standards coming out next year. We really spent this year kind of getting things ready to roll our new science standards out next year. For those of you who I have not met this year, my name is Jake Beers. I'm the K-5 Science TOSA. I taught for the last 8 years in Fayetteville and a couple years before that in Kentucky. So it's been a blessing to be here in Springdale. My wife works here in the district. She's the ESL, one of the ESL specialists for elementary school, and she was involved with the family literacy program for a while. So you may know her as well. So we're going to jump in today. We have 3 things on our agenda we're going to talk about. Number 1 is kind of curiosity in the classroom and how it's connected to science. We're going to talk about the Arkansas K-12 science standards, which are really the next generation science standards. So if you've heard anything about NGSS, the next generation science standards, Arkansas took NGSS and verbatim used it, but just renamed it Arkansas K-12. Mostly because of the mess we're dealing with Common Core right now. Like, we're renaming Common Core in Arkansas. So it was some of making sure that it was related to Arkansas, but they're identical. So they're verbatim, word for word. So if you look at anything NGSS related, they will correlate. So if you're looking for materials, you can look for those. And then we're going to talk about curriculum materials that are going to be available, as well as some of the curriculum units. So one of the things that I want to kind of reiterate is that this is looked at as a long process, or a several-year process. So I had a chance to hear Michelle Snyder. She's a science specialist at the state, and she made this statement that we don't expect a flip of the switch with these new standards. I think they learned from Common Core that if you throw out new standards, it's going to take a while for teachers to get their feet wet and really feel like they understand what's going on. And so they really look at this as a multi-year process, and I do as well. So know that this is the beginning, that we're putting things in place to support you next year as we transition into these new standards. But know that this is just the start, and that every year, hopefully we can continue to grow and continue to do more and more in regards to our science instruction. ACT Aspire is also driving this shift. So as you guys saw this year, your kids in 3rd, 4th, and 5th took that 55-minute science test, which to me was really surprising that it ended up being the same length as a math test. So that's a big shift in the assessment world of science. So that's driving some of this new kind of focus on science as well. So we're going to start with that curiosity piece. And we're going to watch this video by Sir Ken Robinson. It's about 1.5 minutes long. And the text of his speech is in front of you in your handout. So if you have your handout, his text is on the front cover. So there should be at your tables, or so go ahead and you can follow along if you want to, but the text should be right there. And after the video, we'll do something with this text as well.
The second, thank you. The second principle that drives human life and flourishing is curiosity. If you can light the spark of curiosity in a child, they will learn without any further assistance very often. Children are natural learners. It's a real achievement to put that particular ability out or to stifle it. Curiosity is the kind of engine of achievement. Now, the reason I say this is because one of the effects of the current culture here, if I can say so, has been to deprofessionalize teachers. There is no system in the world or any school in the country that's better than its teachers. Teachers are the lifeblood of the success of schools. But teaching is a creative profession. Teaching properly conceived is not a delivery system. You know, you're not there just to pass on received information. Great teachers do that. But what great teachers also do is mentor, stimulate, provoke, engage. You see, in the end, education is about learning. If there's no learning going on, there's no education going on. And people can spend an awful lot of time discussing education without ever discussing learning. The whole point of education is to get people to learn.
All right, so I want you to take a few minutes, and I want you to kind of look through the text, or kind of, you can reread part of his text, and I want you to underline or highlight kind of 2 key phrases that stood out to you in that you could kind of relate to science education. And then when you get it after that, we're going to go ahead and take a minute to discuss with your table. So I'll give you about a minute to reread and underline, and then about a minute or so to discuss what stood out to you in your group. You guys need handouts in the back? Do you short? You have enough? Okay. Just making sure. You want to need another one? All right, so after you've identified kind of 2 key phrases or 2 key things, take a minute when your group's ready and go ahead and discuss what you underlined and how you thought that related to science instruction. I'll give you about a minute or so to do that.
I underlined, this is kind of basic, but curiosity is an achievement. I think that's science to a T, because mathematics is very black and white. But with science, it gives the kids to kind of be curious of what happens next.
Is there any on that stream?
And also, leads up to this whole statement. Great teachers, they don't just deliver the content, they mentor, stimulate. They have that interest and that curiosity, they take care of the rest.
All right. So we're going to come back together. I know there was some great discussion happening at Smith. There was a great discussion here. Does anyone want to share kind of one of the things that stood out to them in relation to science and how this stood out in science? Any phrase that really stood out to you?
We said here that the children are natural learners.
Yeah.
If you think about a toddler, or that is the first thing they're drawn to is bugs or dinosaurs.
Yeah.
It's a science topic, is usually, they don't want to sit down and read a book.
Yeah.
They want to go out and
Play and
drop
explore,
the ball
right?
down and slide and see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
They want to do those things. So science is the main thing.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and my 3-year-old boy is all science experiments, though he doesn't know it, right? I mean, it's always every day kids learn about the world through doing things. So that really is what we do in science. Anything else that stood out to you?
Ours was, if there's no learning going on, there's no education going on.
Yeah.
So just reading a book to them, you might think that's a great lesson plan and teaching the vocabulary, but if they're not really getting their hands in and learning it, then it's pointless and we've wasted everybody's time.
Yeah. So that hopefully that through science we really engage our students in that high quality of instruction to really hopefully capture some learning. Yeah, one more.
Curiosity is the engine of achievement. Like with science, like people do science because they're curious about what's going to happen. And so without like questioning and having all that, I feel like you're not going to be successful in what you do.
Yeah.
Are curious by nature.
Yeah, for sure. This is, I think, the 19th time I've done this, and the curiosity is the achievement is a big one. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the word sort. So what I want you guys to do is with your table, what I'd like you to do, am I good on mic? Oh, okay, got it. I'll repeat questions. That's what she texted me. What I want you guys to do with your envelope is go ahead and take the words out, and this is going to be an open sort. So as a group, I want you to kind of take a look at the words and sort them however makes sense to you. So as a table, take about 5 minutes and sort these in what ways make sense to you. And I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do that.
That's my strategy. I'm not part of How about because that's the way of communicating information? Or I don't know.
Put it there for now.
Hey, we just brought out the password. That was my strategy.
Okay, communicating is cause and effect.
I don't know because it says that, but it doesn't seem like a do. And these are like actions. Yeah.
This one's structure and function. Oh, wait a minute, we've got here, these are the types of signs.
When you tell us their strategies, I think they're like this. Here's another one.
These three.
Developing and using.
I'll tell you all about it.
There you go. Engaging in argument from evidence.
You did. So, what was hard about when you had life, physical, and earth? What was the challenge? You started, they started going over. So, you
I think this is a hard
these three, and then you would look at those and see
I think some possibilities are everywhere. Stability and change.
That's good. Hey, your best is the best. And there really is no right or wrong answer. We're going to look at what they sort of. What did you guys, how did you do this? And why did you get
I don't know, they're just over here.
and then you started.
I think it's under. Right.
Okay, so those are boy these. Hey, no, you didn't forget your sciences at all. You have your big four sciences here. I think you're on the right track, knowing that those going together is a
Hey, I just learned that they really all the
actions of science.
What you learn in that. Like they all fit under the umbrella.
Hey, using linguistics to break it down is not about way attacking it. So what do you guys start with? What do you guys start with? Okay. And Okay, so those almost become their own category, right? These are the ones that go All right, so that's your 5 minutes. I saw some people looking at me like, come on, I don't know what to do. There's got to be a right way to do this. I saw a lot of people start with the big sciences, life, earth, and physical, and those are headings on the top, right? And then you started to sort words into those. What was hard? Was that hard to do?
Yes, they all go together.
Because they could all go together, right? So this one phrase, I could put it here, I could put it there, I could put it there. You're right, and then you begin to pull those out. So we're going to take a look. We're going to take a look at a video that kind of breaks down what's called the 3 dimensions of the new standards. And hopefully, after the video, one way to sort these words will make a little more sense. So we'll watch this video. After the video, during the video, you can move your words around if you want to resort them into the categories.
It's 1.2.
When we learn things, it isn't for memorizing a piece of information. Just reciting science facts or principles is not what we want children to be able to do. We want them to be able to go out in the world and make sense of novel phenomena. So making sense of things really is engaging in a performance and saying, I need to construct an explanation of why or how this occurs.
Okay, let's get started.
Are you ready? 56.
Throughout the 3 days, I want you to engage as the scientist, you as the student, you as the learner.
If it was room temperature water, would it be behaving in the same way?
What's the science behind this? What's happening? As teachers start focusing on the next generation science standards, they will be able to help students see science as it really is, that it's not just a set of steps and procedures.
The real hope is that they can make a connection between what we do in the modeling of performances of science and what they do in their classroom.
Oh, wow. In this day and age, one of the factors influencing the next generation science standards is the globalization, understanding we're in a global community. We're not kind of an isolated entity here.
The next generation science standards takes the vision from the framework for K-12 science education and puts it into a set of performance expectations, and it calls for the students to actively engage in science. It sets out parameters for science education, clear goals, along with describing the 3 dimensions that students can engage in to make sense of science. 3 dimensions are the cross-cutting concepts, the science and engineering practices, and the disciplinary core ideas.
Most of those ideas are not new. The integration of them, pulling those 3 dimensions together, is new.
If we're going to have the kids doing that, instruction has to reflect that.
What I'm walking away from today, kind of a big shift for me, is we can focus in on something. For me is we can focus in on something.
The idea that there's a cause-effect relationship.
What's causing the cloudiness?
It's causing the bubbles to come off of the ice.
It's going to get pushed in the direction of the wind, right?
And finally, patterns used as evidence to support their explanations.
So to me, the pattern is just the fluttering back and forth, right? Do you have a question in mind?
Why that pattern, that
The back and forth
pattern?
What if we change the direction of the flag? If we turn it this way?
Okay. I want to go inside and just make a little paper flag that we can blow on and manipulate.
The practices are a set of things that children do in engaging in science performances.
Asking questions right here, that's what students do. As a professional teacher, you have to create an environment in which students are asking questions that help them make sense of things.
Ready?
150.
Why doesn't that ball return to that exact same level that you dropped it?
Engaging students in the practices really does pique their curiosity, and it helps them have a desire to go out and have more questions about the world, which asking questions is a practice. So it's something we want them to be able to do, to be able to discover more about the world.
What else contributes to it not reaching its maximum height that it started at?
The pull of gravity. Gravity is still pulling it back down even though it's bouncing up. As learners, using evidence and using that evidence to construct explanations is important. I think having those experiences will really help students own the content.
More bounce, more energy in the bounce. And that's really the kinetic energy.
The last dimension of the core ideas, and there's nothing new here. We don't want kids at the end of instruction to recite the core ideas. We want them to use them in science performances, to make sense of novel phenomena, applying them to construct explanations and develop arguments.
So the alcohol is less dense than the ice. You can see the density in there is different.
Oh, yeah.
The core ideas in particular become valuable because we revisit them through every grade band, and they're moving forward in a very logical way.
Those things we're asking them to do can be applied to more than just alcohol and water. It can be applied to cloud formation. It can be applied to condensation.
Why? What's happening?
I think what's exciting about the next generation science standards is this intersection of the three dimensions, and that we're not just working on practices one day. You really are infusing the three dimensions within the classroom.
One of the things that you've done is asking what if. By doing that, I have to be able to take what I know, what I've learned, looking at the models, looking at patterns, and applying them somehow to show that I understand what would happen if I changed a dynamic.
It's been real helpful to remember that, I can't do one without thinking about the other.
No change, we should add that, right?
That's how students are going to be thinking about them as well.
Execute.
It's my hope that this will be the reform in science education that not only gets students more proficient in science, but builds interest in science.
All right, so in that video you were introduced to this three-dimensional model. So we have the practices as one category, and I heard someone say the doing words earlier. I was over here talking about the doing words, they sorted those. So anything that has that ing, asking, or all that doing. Then you have the core ideas, and those are the kind of the 3 or 4 big headings of science. And then the cross-cutting concepts are almost like the big themes of science. These colors are going to be really important. Everything with the new standards is all color-coded. So practices will always be labeled in blue. Core ideas will always be orange, and cross-cutting concepts will be green. So you'll see, like in our curriculum units, there's the color coding, and other places there's those 3 colors. So the colors are important. So there's our 8 practices that you guys hopefully were able to kind of resort and figure out. The great thing about the practices, I know you can't see all these words, but science, math, and ELA practices overlap in this big area in the center. So a lot of what we're already doing in math, a lot of the problem solving and thinking strategies we're doing in math really apply into the sciences, and a lot of the reading comprehension strategies and writing that we're doing overlaps into the sciences. So there's big connections between the practices in those 3 content areas. The patterns, cross-cutting concepts, there's those 7 of them there. And those are the big themes, like cause and effect. That's a great topical connection between reading and science that we can make. And then finally are those core ideas. Physical life and earth we all grew up with, and engineering, technology, and application of science is that STEM component. That's that newer part of science. So that's actually part of our new standards. So when we talk about standards, they're actually called performance expectations, or PEs. We're going to get some more words, right? We love these little acronyms in education. So performance expectations are what students are supposed to do. And I want you to really highlight that with the new standards, it's not about what they can really regurgitate to you, but what they're able to do. What they're able to, like that performance task, performance expectations, what are they able to do at the end of what we're working on? So I want you to take a minute, and this is a little hard to see the words, but I want you to study this diagram. The words are like frame and magnet, cone, dust cover, rear suspension, terminal strip, voice coil assembly. So take a minute, and I know you guys are smart. If I came back next week and I said, hey, we're going to have a pop quiz, you got to label the diagram, I know you could knock it out of the park. But does anybody know what this is? Speaker. Nice scalp. Nice work. This is a speaker. So for so long, we talked to kids about memorizing diagrams, and we talked about words and concepts, but sometimes we didn't get at the heart of what's the big idea, what's the big concept. And so when we begin to transition to our new standards, you're going to really focus on sense making, having kids make sense of a phenomenon. And a phenomenon is just a science mystery, whether it's why is the sky blue, why does the ball fall back to the earth, anything that you're studying in science is a phenomenon. And so figuring out is one of the big things that you're really going to lead your students through. So we're now going to take a look at some actual standards. And so this is a standard: plan and conduct an investigation to provide evidence of the effects of balanced and unbalanced forces on the motion of an object. So that's a third grade standard. And what's interesting about every standard is that you're able to color code them and find a practice, a core idea, and a cross-cutting concept in every single standard. So what I want you to do with your table group, using those words that you sorted a minute ago, I want you to find what's the practice in this standard, what's the core idea, and what's the cross-cutting concept. So work for about 2 minutes with your group and find the practice, core idea, and cross-cutting concept. So you had on these, there's life, earth,
You could make that.
So one of these wins.
No, these are all
You got two. You're correct so far.
It can't be this kind. Yes, I know where you It could be. We talked about before, so we're in the middle. No, I think it's this. Depending on the experiment, if you're watching.
All right, so remember you're looking for what's the practice, what's the core idea, and what's the cross-cutting concept. You guys ready? All right, what's the practice? You can just call it out.
Planning.
The practice is practice. Planning and carrying out investigation. Yeah. Planning and carrying out investigation is the practice. What's the core idea? Physical science. There you go. So physical science and the cross-cutting concept, cause and effect. Good.
That's what we put.
So when you look at any standard, you can color code them just like this. So you can find the practice, you can find the cross-cutting concept, and you can find the actual topic that you're looking at. So we're now going to look at an actual page of standards. And so if you open your handout, this should be in color because they're a lot easier to look at in color. And we're going to look at like how a standards page is laid out. So I gave you the exact standard that you just looked at, the plan to conduct an investigation to determine the effect of balanced and unbalanced forces on the effect of an object. And I want you guys to talk with your table about a couple things. What do you maybe already notice or see about this layout of this page? And then what do you want to know more about? So if you have, as you think about questions, I'll maybe have Smith text me some questions and maybe answer some of theirs as well. So take a minute to talk with your group about what this page looks like, what do you notice, what do you see, and then what do you want to know more about as we go on. So take about 2 or 3 minutes to do that.
I like the red part. Yeah, the clarification statement. I love the clarification.
I was just showing help at like the connections, but how to force it. That's an acronym I don't know.
Well, I know these acronyms.
The DCI is the disciplinary core idea. It's like the big top concept. So it tells you what other grades teach that same concept. So it says like kindergarten, 3rd grade, and MS is middle school. So like it gives you an idea.
Kindergarten, 3rd and 5th is when it's taught in our
Yeah. Or with the big times is teaches. Yep. And the middle school are banded, so they didn't say 6, 7, 8. They just put all the standards together in one chunk.
And just look also the connections that the DCI so it could have a connection.
Same as with the other.
All right, so we'll just go ahead and open discussion up. Is it overwhelming when you look at this page, the first read, or not? Yes, no? What do you like about the look of the page? What's easy to read about it? The colors, yeah. I the first time I did this training, I did it with Tyson Elementary, and I did not make color copies, and it was very confusing because the colors are really important because the blue is all your practices, the orange is your kind of big core ideas, and the yellow is your the green is your cross-cutting concepts, and that's important. Anything else you saw that that you were familiar with? Anything you noticed that like, oh, I know what those are? Yeah, these connections to Common Core are already at the bottom for you. So the skills that students need to do in this standard, in reading and writing and math, are connected already to that standard. They kind of outline those for you. DCI is this disciplinary core idea. So it's what's the big idea that students are looking at? So we'll go over a few of these. There's your performance expectation at the top. This red clarification statement, I think, is one of the best things of the new standards because it tells you in like layman's terms, like, oh, I see exactly what they mean. So it says examples could include an unbalanced force on one side of a ball can make it start moving. Well, the standard sounds really complicated, but then when you read the clarification statement, you're just pushing a ball, or you're pushing against a box and someone else is pushing against a box and it doesn't move. That shows balance forces. They're not that hard a concept. So I think that piece really helps a lot. Then these are all of your foundation boxes. So here's the one practice we highlighted. Here's the core idea that we're highlighting. And here's the cause and effect. This core idea is shared by other grade levels. And it tells you what other grade levels teach the same concept. So this forces of motion concept is taught by kindergarten, 3rd grade, a little bit in 5th, and then middle school is when you have these big forces of motion blocks. So when we look at your year, you'll notice that like kindergarten and 3rd grade have a similar unit, maybe 1st and 4th have similar units. Topics usually come up about twice in the course of an elementary school career. And then finally, you have your connections to Common Core. So Yep.
I was just going to say the connections to Common Core, if anybody has that lesson plan guilt of, oh no, I can't teach science because it's math time, they've taken that guilt away because it tells you why you can teach science during math time or science during literacy block.
Yeah.
Because they've done it right there. They take the guilt away.
So your comment was about integration, and then by having the connection standards there, that shows that there's some natural ways to connect and integrate and overlap some of the lessons and standards. So what we're going to do right now, for sake of time, we're going to do this together, this activity 3. So I'm going to read a statement, and then I want you to we're just going to call out a word that connects. So how would you describe a performance expectation? What are the performance expectations? At the top, what are those? What are the performance expectations? At the top of a page, those are your standards, yeah. So performance expectations are what we think of as our standards. A core idea, what's a core idea? The big topic, yeah, the topic we're covering. The foundational boxes, that's these boxes. What do they give us? They give us background knowledge, some procedure, some things that students need to be doing. And then what are the connection boxes? Yeah, Common Core connections. I've also, if you flip to the back of your handout, the last page, some of you already noticed this, I gave you Arkansas's cheat sheet that they wrote for how to read a standards page. So it's everything like labeled and numbered and says this is what that is, and there's explanations. So that's a cheat sheet for you to hang on to kind of show you what to do if you're looking at a standards page. So everything's kind of outlined and boxed. The standards are on Arkansas's website in addition to a lot of other places. So if you go to state standards, and you can find them on our website, you can also find them on NGSS, their website, or NSTA has a website as well. So we're now going to shift gears from here's what standards look like to here's how we're going to teach this concept. So if you remember, you filled out a survey for me, and I went to most every other elementary school in the fall, and we did this, where are we in science? And so I took all 17 elementary schools' responses to this, and I made a word cloud to figure out where we were. I was new to the district. I wanted to know what we were doing. The larger the word, the more times it was mentioned. So this was where we are as of this year. Magic School, I think that's Magic School Bus. That was, if the words were separated, they didn't go together. So this is where we were. And then this is what you wanted to see. So the next thing I asked for was, what do you want to see? So there's a huge word I put together as materials and resources, and then integration, hands-on, budget, yeah. So those are how I began the process of looking at how are we going to tackle this teaching in the curriculum side. So one of the things that we did, they're already in your office, I saw them there today, is that you got material kits for every single unit you teach. So you get 4 of these. And the reason we did kits over like a science closet was because science closets can be really messy over time. And who has what, who needs what. And so I really wanted you to make your own kit. So I kind of got you started, the district got you started with the got to have things or things that are nice to have. And then you can add things to make your own kit. So what books you have. Maybe you have supplies here at school that you want to divvy out and move things around. You can really make this your own, kind of making the big concepts. Cool thing about building kits, you can see this was my life for the last 3 weeks. I have never seen more boxes in my life, 100% honest. And the warehouse people are ready for me to be gone. But thankfully, due to help from people like your SFLP class, this is actually Miss D's class right here, we built, I don't know how many kits this week. So this was actually Sonora's SFLP class. You guys they came on Monday. And we built kits for a couple hours, and I had Elmdale, I had Jones, and I had Turnbow. So I had 4 SFLP classes that helped me, and 5th grade kits are built as of this morning. They're palleted, and they're ready to ship to you. So you should get your kits by this week. The other thing we're going to use for in the integration side, that was the other big piece, was Picture Perfect. And Picture Perfect is a literacy trade book based science lessons. And through that, we're able to get you, they use trade books to teach science concepts. And so we're getting you 2 copies from the vendor. And then ELA stepped up huge, and they picked up another 2 copies for you. So when it's all said and done, we should have 4 copies of every text you need to teach, because that was something that was a big barrier for us this year, was that we only had 2 copies of a book, and that was hard to share, because I always plan with my teachers, and we're going to do this lab on Tuesday. Well, if I can't do it till Friday because everybody's rotating, it was hard. So we have worked hard to make sure that we get as many copies as we can. So we're working hard on that as well. I can't ensure that every book has 4 copies, but that's the goal we're working towards. We're doing a summer workshop on Picture Perfect on Tuesday the 2nd. So I think this flyer went out a few times. And that's Megan Rojo, the K-2 Literacy TOSA, Linda Odell, the 3.5 Literacy TOSA, and myself are going to be presenting there. And we're actually going on to Arkadelphia this coming week to be trained from the authors of this book. They're in the Dawson Co-op. So we're excited to bring that back. If you can't make this training, there's going to be lots of other opportunities in the future. This is just the beginning. I wanted you to be, the integration piece was another piece that we talked about earlier. This is just one of our district planning meetings where us TOSAs sat down and we looked at our units and where we can make connections for you already. So we're tried really hard to really look at concepts and topics to make that integration really easy. You'll also notice that when you land on the new ELA units, it shows you here's your ELA topic, here's your science concept for the quarter, here's your social studies topic, and those units will be linked right there from that one page, so that you land the ELA and you really can see what's my big thing that I need to work on, and then you as a classroom teacher and your team can really make a plan for how we're going to tackle this concept. In the unit, these are the books, they're outlines, the books you're going to use. I've given you some other ELA and math integration pieces and tried to highlight the big ideas that are there. We built these units as 4-week units. So think about a quarter, 4 weeks for science, 4 weeks for social studies. You can flip and flop. You can make it work for your classroom. I try to make them about 30 minutes long. And for some that may be too much, but we try to find a good happy medium. There's a lot of integration. Everything is hyperlinked in the units. And then one of the things that we did is I gave a sample unit calendar. So this is in every unit there's one of these. So that's week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and you can teach it just like that if you want to, or you can mix and match. You don't have to teach any of that. Anything in green requires materials that are in the kit, or you may have to have a few in addition, and anything blue is things you can integrate into your literacy block. So we try to make those integration pieces come out, and everything, these are all hyperlinks. So you just click on that, will take you right to the lesson for that day. So really making it easy was one of my big tasks. So I had a lot of feedback from teachers, and hopefully that helped to get that process going.
Can we just applaud that?
Well, I'm trying. I'm making it easy. You gotta start somewhere, right? And then last thing, if you've been using Mystery Science as a resource that I didn't purchase, but if you've been using it in your building, it was free this year, and it's $500 for your building. Next year, if that's something you're like, hey, we've loved it, you just need to talk to your administrators about, hey, we make sure you pick that up. I didn't write it in the curriculum itself, but it's a good additional resource if you want to use it. All right, so that sums up the curriculum side, standard side, and we're going to wrap up. Before we do that, I want to make sure there's no questions. I'll give Smith a chance to maybe text a question if they need to. Are there any questions at all about curriculum yet? We had several people attend the Content Academies from Sonora. I know Tom was there for the 3rd grade team. We'll have Content Academies for each of the following units coming out. So before a unit rolls out, there'll be a Content Academy that you can attend, do the hands-on activities, and really get a feel for what the unit's about. The units will be online, hopefully Monday, like quarter 1. We're going to roll them out by quarters. Quarter 1 will be online so you can look at it over the summer and be like, hey, I know what I'm teaching when I come back in the fall, and then they'll be released as they go. All right, the last thing we're going to do is you're going to work with your table, and I want you to think of a word to summarize what classroom instruction might look like next year in a next generation science classroom. So go ahead and talk with your table. Think of a word that sums up what science instruction might look like.
Like Sunday, but at recess today. I think Claritin is rotating every day, but this happens to me every year. I end up having to get like a steroid to just get through the No, I had to take allergy shots for like this month, I probably should still. Did they help or not? Because we're wondering about
All right. So before we kind of wrap up, there was a question from Smith. Is there science data incorporated in the lessons for students to read and analyze, tied to ACT Aspire? So at 3rd, 4th, and 5th, we try to do that. In the 3rd grade specifically, there's the unit assessment. One of the unit assessments, it has graphing and charting that they have to do. And then whenever there's a natural connection between an ACT Aspire sample unit that's been released, I try to make those connections and link those in there. And then we'll try to build as much as we can resources to help prep students for that. But the goal is in the upper grades for sure that there's some connections for that. Any other questions before we go? All right, let's share those words out. So let's start over here. What are some of those big words that you guys talked about? Inquisitive? All right.
Integrated.
Integrated.
Ditto.
Integrate, not ditto. Yeah? Is it the same? All right. Engaged. Curious. Integrated. Consistency. Getting back to some consistency. Well, I hope that this meeting made you feel like empowered, that you feel like, hey, I feel like I know what's coming. I feel like I have the resources to do it. Know that I'm here as a resource, and my role and my job I look at next year as being here as a support person. So I'm just a phone call away or an email away, and if you want me to come to your PLCs before a unit, if you want me to come help teach a model lesson, whatever it is, I want to be able to support you guys. So without further ado, if you could put your word sorts back in your envelopes, and Smith, you're welcome to keep all of your words. They're yours to keep. If you have any questions, please let me know as you guys head out the door. Oh, I think I said this earlier. Units, their question was, when will the units be online? Unit 1 should be online by Monday. So it'll be up online, and they'll be integrated in the other units when they're released as well. So, all right. Well, hey, thank you for your time. Thank you for working with us and Smith as we did this together, and we'll see you guys later.